So now we're going to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's regeneration. And I don't know if you can even have a hospitality or travel conference and not talk about this. It's not, we all know it's happening to the earth, and everyone in this room, we have something to do with how places are changing. That's the industry we're in. So, like I was saying in my opening, is there another way? And so today I have Andrea Nicholas Perdue, CEO of Wagonhound Holdings. Thank you for being here. I'd love to learn more, a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Sure. Well, thank you all so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here, and it's been really fun meeting all the different individuals and what people are doing. It's so exciting. There's so many entrepreneurs in this room, and it's been really fun to hear everybody's story. I can give a very brief background on my history and my family's history and kind of how I got to where I am today. But so my family we're ranchers, and we've been ranchers since we immigrated to the country in the 1880s, and then we were ranchers in the UK before that. So it's kind of what we do, and it's very kind of a deep fabric of the family and who we are. First, my family ranched in Kansas, and then my father was raised on a cattle ranch in Nebraska, where his father was the general manager, not the owner. I'm very proud that he took the approach really of soil science and soil health, kind of before that was a thing, being a baby of the Dust Bowl, really realizing that our approach to soil health is so crucial to general human health. And so I was really proud that he was doing that very early on. And then like so many people, the real opportunity for my father to see life off the ranch was to get an education. So in order to do that, joined the Navy, ended up in San Diego. So I was raised in San Diego. When he came out into the private sector and had some financial success, decided that what was really important to him was living a life on the land. And as soon as he was able, bought some land. So when I was growing up, we'd go back to the ranch in Nebraska, and then he ran a cow-calf operation with my mom in Montana, and then began building out Wagonhound in the late 90s. My professional path was in finance. So I started my career with Goldman Sachs on the trading floor in London, did that for a while, and then came back to the States and went to business school, and then joined a private equity firm down here in Los Angeles. And so was very much on that path and had this kind of ranching background just as a part of the fabric of the family. About 2 years ago, my father was thinking about legacy, transition, all of those types of things. He'd spent, blood, sweat, and tears to build something that was truly important to him. The footprint of the ranch is actually almost exactly the same size as the footprint of the city of Los Angeles. So imagine that you were...
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So that's like you're up here and, you kind of start up in the valley, and then you need to drive down, pick up a friend over at LAX, and then you're going to stop on Abbot Kinney and have a coffee with a friend, and then you need to, meet with your friends and have dinner in the Palisades, and you were the only person on the road, right?
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So that was something that was truly important to him, right? And land and wildlife stewardship was really critical, and so he just looked at me and he said, do you think that you could make this last? Mm-hmm. So I resigned from the career in finance and traded my Louboutins for my cowboy boots, thank goodness, and I took over Wagonhound Land and Livestock. So we are a large commercial working ranch, and in that transition, it's this beautiful moment to look back at where you have been and where you want to go, what was important for your history and then what's so important for your future. Yeah. And so that's such a great chance to look at that. So build on all of those beautiful things that you've created to make it even more relevant in the future. And so there's a couple things that were really important to me. And first and foremost, when I looked at our different business lines, one thing I thought it was crucial for us to add is this hospitality aspect to it. I feel deeply passionate about the innate connection between humanity and nature. It is a fundamental part of how humans are built. And very few of us now live in that environment, which is so detrimental to the health of our brains. And so being blessed with growing up having that in my life and being able to share that with people, I saw the impact it can have. So that was something. You can be a large landowner, but unless you really share why that's important and share that beauty, then it's not that relevant. And so it was very important to me to open Reed Creek Lodge at Wagonhound, and we're a bespoke buyout only property. So it's a lodge on a certain part of the ranch. It's one group only. And so I guess one thing that's fun about that is I got to plan the program with only those things that I cared about, right? Ignorance is bliss. So all the things that if you went and you said, this is what you need to do in order, I didn't ask anybody. I didn't check on any of those things. And I just organized this program based on the things on my own personal experience and what I cared so much about. And what I wanted to deliver to people is that connectedness. So when you get to the regeneration, obviously running the ranch itself with regenerative farming practices is crucial, and that's crucial for land and wildlife stewardship. So if anybody actually wants to talk about ranching regeneration, we could talk about that all day long. But since we're not at the Cattlemen's Conference, we can talk.
Are we?
And so when I think about regeneration in the construct of Reed Creek Lodge at Wagonhound, it's that literally the regenerative aspects of being in nature and the connections that provides with that group that you've chosen to travel with, and what being on that land can do for you. So that's where I see regeneration in this context.
I think it's what a story. I was like fascinated. Maybe you should have done a speech. I don't know. But when I heard, your team had reached out and I heard about what you were doing, it connected. I felt very aligned myself. And I think also the hospitality and travel industries are shifting. No longer is sustainability do it have to be sustainable? Is that like a design trend now? Like we have to be, and in Europe, the government is now intervening where you actually have to be. But what have you seen in your own travels? Do you have any advice to any other hoteliers as in any regenerative practices that they can implement in their hotel?
Sure. So what's so interesting about that is you don't want it to become a buzzword, because then it gets discounted
completely.
And so it's almost just what's so deeply authentic to yourself, right? So I don't classify us, I don't market us as a sustainable hospitality operation. It's just how we live. If we're not sustainable, then we destroy the number one resource that we depend on for our livelihood. And so it's really the only way that we can operate. I'd get yelled at as a kid if I took the side-by-side off the road and destroyed the grass, right? And not for aesthetics, but that's what we're growing. You're really growing grass. And so I think it has to just come down from that authenticity of really that's how you're choosing to operate moment to moment, choice to choice.
So you're saying that it's on the leadership team. Well, you know what's so funny? We spoke about this at our owners conference. It was not a question, it got brought up, but we were saying unless whoever's making the decisions personally leads a regenerative lifestyle, it's really hard for the hotel, because this was a hotel conference, for the hotel to be regenerative. So I think that's a really interesting point. I was Googling a little bit, and I was looking at I never heard of this before. I'm not saying this right. Agritourism? Okay, y'all have heard of it. How does Wagonhound Holdings contribute to this? Can visitors experience the ranch's day-to-day operations? And if so, what can they expect? And how do you describe agritourism?
Sure. So I would say what probably pops into people's heads when they think of agritourism is probably different than what you might get when you come to Wagonhound. So agritourism to me would be, do you go and you see the sustainable farm when you're at a very, at this beautiful hotel, and you go and see the farm to table. When you come to Wagonhound, you're stepping foot on a truly authentic American working ranch. And so I think that this provides probably one of the most interesting impacts. And when you come down to kind of regenerative and sustainability, it comes down, and we were talking about this actually when our Ibiza villa owner, we were talking about this
Caroline.
over breakfast, but it comes down to just those individual choices that you make throughout your life. And we've become so disconnected to the food system. So there's nothing that will connect you to that more than when you go onto a cow-calf operation and you're on the land and you see the cows and you see the calves and you see the cowboys that are taking care of them, and you actually are seeing from the very beginning what that means, and the amount of hands and the amount of care it takes to produce any of the food that we eat. It is impossible not to have that experience and have that impact the choices that you're making. right? So things don't just appear on the plate. There are a lot of hands that had to get involved to make that happen. And there's some messy parts of our food system. And when you really truly know them, it will help support cognitive choices that you make, and very conscious choices. And to me, that's kind of the root of having a sustainable lifestyle or operation.
Absolutely. I think that's the way you've put that makes so much sense to me. And I've actually never heard anyone talk about it that way.
It's very, very humbling when you actually look at the food system and what it takes to get something on your plate. And so it's impossible not to kind of make a very meaningful or thankful choice behind that.
Well, why do we travel? I mean, I think that this is so related, what you just said, to bring it from regeneration, though, to why we travel. You know, when ignorance is bliss, like you don't know what's happening in the food, but also like cultures. Like I went to India and Bali last year, and it was like, wow, like this is how other people live. These are their values. And you don't, you know, in India, I think every human in the world should go one time in their life. It is the most beautiful country in the world by far. And not just the color, it's the energy, it's the people, but it can also be very disturbing when you get there, when you see the poverty, when you see, you know, children that grew up and, you know, it's really dark and deep, and then you see them begging, and it really opens your eyes. And that's why I wanted to relate it to why we're in the travel industry. I think that that's what you're saying here is so related, and why travel, we are in the right industry, because there's no way it's ever going away. It's, even though people said that in 2020, they were like, this is the worst industry to be in, I'm getting the heck out. It actually ended up being the most, I guess in a way, sustainable in terms of careers, because it's part of who we are as humans. I just wanted to open up to the floor. Does anyone have any?
First of all, I'm so inspired because I love Yellowstone, and to me, you're the female equivalent of
Afterwards,
Yellowstone.
I'll tell you what's true and
And
what's
I'm
not.
like, I've got to be friends with this woman, because everything you said, it's, you know, building my wellness retreat, you know, the blessing come exactly the hardship. The girl that was looking after the land, you know, basically resigned from one day to another. The next day, I had to be the one going, looking after the land, and I work my whole summer. I was dark, I was covered in dust, I had to take care of the bees, but I really, really got to understand the land. And what you said with, you appreciate, like, I'm vegetarian, and I have no problem with cattle and cows, but I want them to live like yours. I want them to be cared by people that care about the connection between animal and the soul and the earth. And that is the most important thing. And as much as I'm vegetarian, it angers me when I see this push to get rid of all the cattle in America and all these ranches, because it is part of what, you know, makes life. So I think it's amazing. And I'd like to talk to you and understand more about how I can come as a guest and host retreat with Ariela.
So our next retreat center is at Wagonhound Holding. That's why we brought you, Andrea. We really wanted to go. But, oh, Kim, right here.
If you don't mind asking, what is your profit model? I mean, do you sell meat and retreats? Oh, that rhymes. Or what is it? And has being sustainable and regenerative made you more profitable?
Sure. So if you look at the business that I run holistically, I run Wagonhound Holdings, which has multiple verticals underneath, the foundational asset of which is the large commercial ranch. And so when I look at the different profit lines for the ranch itself, the way I define it is the businesses that we operate because we own that land. They're not revenue streams that we would have if we sold the land. On that are cattle, horses, farming, and then the hospitality side. And so in terms of our revenue stream, what's our largest revenue stream on that property? It is the cattle. And does it matter for us to be regenerative in that? Absolutely. It is a very profitable business margin to run very bulk cattle, and there's a lot of ranches that have done that. We've run everything from kind of like your GAP 4 to all organic, and you do need to find kind of where you can garner that margin with the end consumer, where they're willing to pay for that additional. And there's a couple great companies who I trust where they source from. But so has it helped us on the cattle side to be regenerative, absolutely, and it's something that we push for all the time, and there's some really neat stuff happening within the food industry itself. And in terms of on the hospitality aspect of it, it's that whole experience, and so I consider that whole experience regenerative, and so that kind of is what we're selling, if you will. And so to me, it is the whole experience of kind of honestly regenerating that prefrontal cortex. And so that is our entire model, and I think why people come there.
Beautifully said. Wow. Paula, right over here. The lady in pink.
I'm looking at your lodging and your ranch while you're talking. It's so outstanding and beautiful, and I can see where it would be extremely regenerative to go there. Do you offer a food and beverage component? I mean, if you're out there 300,000 acres.
Sure.
I'm just a practical, operational.
If we invite a guest and we didn't, they'd.
How do we eat?
You know, it's a detox. We're going on a cleanse.
You won't eat until. So it's a buyout only, and I love going through why I designed it the way I designed it. But if you guys are curious about it, I can tell you afterwards. But yes, so when you come, it's all inclusive, something that I cared very deeply about. And so it's got your private chefs, your private guides, and so it's an all-inclusive model.
That sounds terrific. Thank you.
Any last-minute questions? Right over here. For Catherine.
Hi. I was wondering at the lodge, like what's the capacity? How long do people typically stay?
Sure.
And what type of experiences do you offer? Like
Yep.
what's the programming?
So it's a 7-bedroom, 8,000 square foot lodge. Max capacity is 20. And so doing the math, right, it's really built as a family home. And so you've got very flexible bedrooms. So the one that you see up there, if it's the same that we see here,
Yes.
that's a king bed. There's a queen day bed here, and then there's bunk beds in the back. So if it's couples, then it's normally 12 to 14 folks. And if it's families and you need to have those flexible kiddo spaces, then we have all of those. So that's from the capacity point of view. From what you're going to do from a programming perspective, it's completely bespoke, and that was so important to me. But the things that we've got the alpine lakes, paddleboard, kayak, obviously endless hiking, the horseback riding, the e-biking, the archery, the trapper skeet shooting, the wagon rides, so any of those types of things. And there's a lot of different aspects to the program that I cared a lot about. One was accommodating different needs within a group. That's always very challenging to do. And so all the things that we do, because you're on private property and you're not coordinating with any third-party vendors, it's all specifically to that group's needs. It's taking out all of the friction to the mother-in-law who planned the whole thing and is done planning your logistics and doesn't want to hear about it anymore, right? I mean, it's like removing all that stress, so all any of the individuals have to do is just connect with each other and have that beautiful organic time together.
Amazing. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you.